For a long time, those of us in Canada have had a particular appearance that we like to give the rest of the world. An appearance that is not only not true, but quite often we ourselves actually believe is true, even though in our hearts we know it's not. Canada has always had a very different appearance than the United States, always thought of as the one that's like them, but not like them, if you know what I mean. The Western democracy that has the same kind of advantages, although a different upbringing, that doesn't do the insanely hateful things that the United States does. We're the Western democracy that's not like them. And thus, as a result, we've always had a rather arrogant stance of thinking that we're better than other people. Or by that, I mean better than the United States. And a lot of the arrogance that we've had is over our military position. We believe in, was it the old I Am Canadian commercial used to say, we believe in peacekeeping, not policing. Well, apparently, all that's changed. Obviously it has. This appearance that we've always had as being like them but different, and thus being better than them, is a sham. It's not real. And just recently, a terrible blow has been given to that in a way that there is no longer any way that we can pretend that we're not like them anymore. A lot of this began when the war in Afghanistan was launched, and we went right along with the world's imperialist powers after this country that didn't actually do anything to us, didn't actually have anything to do with 9/11. All of it for the conquest of the ruling elite. Now this is a unique thing within Canada. We have a complicated set of imperialist interests. Essentially, in the end, we always do have to answer to the imperialist wishes of the United States, and to a lesser extent, those of England. But then on top of that, we have our own imperial interests, specifically in terms of mining. In fact, Canada has the world's worst human rights record when it comes to mining companies operating overseas. Our mining companies really are that bad. We have been rated the worst in the entire world. And because of Afghanistan's very large untapped mining potential, that's why we're there, for that. But even after that, the invasion of Afghanistan and the occupation that the majority of the population doesn't want, is unpopular with the people, and we can't afford. Even with all that, we still kept our little appearance of being not like them. I recall a conversation, a very short conversation I had with somebody while at work, and I said, like our bombing of Afghanistan. And she turned around and said, that was the Americans, that wasn't us. So by proxy, or in some way, that if we back up the people who are doing that, fight on their side, continue their aggression, then somehow we're not responsible for those bombings of Afghanistan. We're not responsible for backing up the people who commit drone strikes against the population. We didn't commit all the war crimes that this side of the Afghan occupation committed. Yes, we are. We are responsible for that. We did help that. We defend the people who did, and we cooperate with the people who did. Not to mention our own crimes as Canadians that we committed against the people of Afghanistan. The people who were tortured, that we turned over to be tortured when we already knew that it was going on. It was reported. It was reported to the Minister of Defense, Peter MacKay. It was reported to the Prime Minister, Stephen Harper. We knew it was going on. And when these allegations came out and they became made known in Parliament, Parliament was shut down by Stephen Harper so that no investigation could be taken place. Which always reminds me of the former head of the Canadian Army, General Rick Hiller, a soldier first. Or as I personally like to call him, a war criminal first. And even in this, all these imperialist crimes, we still kept our appearance as being different than them. And now, that whole image, the thing that we like to pretend that we're not like the Americans, that we're never as bad as they are, has been torn apart completely. The conservative government has very quietly approved the use of information that was gathered by torture. I'm not kidding. As Shepard Smith once said, America doesn't effing torture. It was more believable to say Canada doesn't effing torture. And now we're just as bad. Public safety threat? I mean, Public Safety Minister Vic Toes has made this all legal now. He's gone ahead and told Canada's border agency and federal police that it's okay to use information that was gathered by torture. New records show that Canada's National Police Force and Federal Border Agency have the authority to use and share information that was likely extracted and was extracted through torture. Now, when the CBC, the state broadcaster, horribly hated by conservatives, called them out on this and contacted them and asked them why they decided to use torture, this is what they said according to the CBC. Our government does not condone the use of torture and certainly does not engage in it, said Julie Carmichael, the Director of Communications for Vic Toes. The Minister's directive is clear. The primary responsibility of Canadian security agencies is to protect Canadian life and property, she told the CBC on Saturday. At all times, we abide by Canadian law. As key members of Canada's security apparatus, both the RCMP and Border Services Agency have frequent and extensive dealings with foreign counterparts. In other words, none of this is even actually being acknowledged. She didn't answer the question. This is a form response. I mean, this is nothing new from a government. Governments do this all the time. My point is that we now condone the use of information through torture. All of our arrogance for the last, 100 years or so, that we're not like them, is now gone. We can't pretend to be better than Americans now. Now, we don't have the as bad of an imperialist past invading countries, but we certainly have our crimes when it comes to backing them up on it. Yes, Canada took a firm stance against Vietnam and said, no, we're not going to go and be a part of that. Yet, the business class here in Canada certainly had no trouble making, I believe it was $2 billion off of the U.S. war machine. We made a lot of things, from TNT to radios to liquor to ammunition. We manufactured a lot of things for the U.S. Army to carry out that war, while at the same time our government, the representatives of the ruling class, told us that the Vietnam War was not something that we wanted to be a part of. As we openly accepted people from the United States who didn't want to be a part of the Vietnam War and told them that they could come here and resist the war, we turned around and had $2 billion put into our economy because of it. No, we're not as bad as the United States. As bad. But this certainly indicates that any kind of belief that we have that we're superior is certainly untrue. We can't pretend that we're not like them anymore. If this country has now gone to the point where we are now condoning torture against people that are more than likely innocent, we have no right to be saying that. We have no right to be saying we're not like them. We're the Western country that people do like. And just because our crimes aren't made as public as the United States does not mean we don't do them. We've had complicity with torture in Afghanistan. JTF-2 had a hand in the overthrowing of Bertrand Arteside in Haiti in 2004. We helped carry that out, and that's why I believe one of our diplomats was actually murdered. Because he may have said something or was going to say something. That's just my belief. We never knew exactly why he was murdered. But that's my suspicion. In the history of this country, for a long time we have been ruled by the Liberal Party. And under the Liberal Party, we could pretend. We had a nice gloss over our country to say that we're not like the Americans. And one of those being that we didn't have an involvement in the Iraq War. Although, to be honest, we literally couldn't have. We don't have the manpower or the resources to actually contribute anything to the war in Iraq. But it was made a center stage point by Jean Chrétien, who was the prime minister at the time, that we would not go into it because we thought it was wrong. And thus we became another symbol of those who dared to defy the U.S., although we didn't get the hatred that France got. You tend not to do that to your largest trading partner. But under the conservatives, it's completely different now. We've signed to authorize the use of torture for collecting information. We participated in the invasion of Libya, the overthrowing of a government that didn't attack anyone. Our government, I suspect, is highly involved with the current attack on Syria. A lot of governments say they have nothing to do with it, and then they do. Officially, we have nothing to do with the current situation going on in Syria, but I would highly suspect that we actually are, because all the countries that are engaged in it are saying that they're not. And I find that since we so happily went along with the situation in Libya, I see no real reason why it wouldn't be the same for our conservative government now, to the situation in Syria. Our nice sheen of being the good Western country who's not like them is gone. The liberals pretended that we were the best Western democracy by trying to distance our identity from theirs. The conservatives don't even try.